So today I'm going to be making some pulled pork, and I thought it would be a good idea to show you how I've done it. It's currently kind of late at night, but that's because that's when I got around to making it. Plus that means I can let it cook overnight and it'll be ready to pull and finish the next morning. Let's do it. So we've got our ingredients here: a pork roast, about half an onion, this is just one that I had in the fridge, some cloves of garlic, and our barbecue seasonings. You can really use anything you want. So first I'm going to slice the onion into thin slices, making sure I don't cut myself when I get to the thinner part. I'm turning it and cutting it into slices down the wide bit, just to make sure that I'm being as safe as possible. And then I'm going to put them all in a bowl and put that off to the side until I'm ready to use it. Then I'm going to get my cloves of garlic and smash them to make it easier to take the skin off. Once they are all peeled, I'm going to mince them as best I can. I would recommend using a chef's knife here, but I don't have one with me, so I'm working with what I've got. One of the benefits of using a chef's knife is that when you have roughly chopped everything, you can rock the knife really nicely and just make sure everything is the same size. So I sort of tried to do that here with this knife, but it's definitely not as nice as it would have been with a chef's knife. And just like the onion, I'm going to put them in a bowl and put that aside until we are ready to use it. Now for the fun part, all of the spices. I'm going to recommend that you open all of the spice bottles you're planning on using because it'll make everything a lot easier and a lot cleaner. So I'm going to have one hand be my dirty/meat hand and the other be my clean hand, which is the one that I used to pick up all the spice bottles. This is why I opened all of them before I started, because it's difficult to open things with one hand. I like to put my pork roast on a plate when I'm putting the rub on it because it just makes cleaning up a whole lot easier. So I'm going to start off with a generous covering of salt, making sure to cover the entire roast, and then doing the same thing with the pepper and the barbecue seasoning. The barbecue rub I'm using is from the dollar store. I love it a lot. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, is basically the point of that. I do like to supplement it with some ground mustard and some smoked paprika, and sometimes some garlic and onion powder, depending on how much fresh garlic and onion I'm using. And there you can see why I recommend keeping one hand clean, because the dirty hand is pretty gross. So now we are going to take the pork roast over to our crock pot, and on the bottom of the crock pot, before I even put the pork roast in, I'm going to put down a layer of garlic and onion. I'm using about a third of the garlic and onion, just covering the bottom, breaking up any of the pieces of onion that are stuck together. If you have more than one piece of meat, then you don't have to use as much in each layer, but I like to put some in between. Anyways, that's beside the point. So now I'm taking my pork roast in, putting it in my crock pot, making sure it's nice and flat on the bottom so I don't have to put too much liquid in, and then using the rest of the onion and garlic and just covering it. This is where I mean when I say if you're putting another piece of meat in, you don't have to put it all in. You can put a thin layer down and then put another piece of meat on top. And then we are just going to cover it all with liquid. I'm using water here, but you can use chicken stock, veggie stock, anything you want really. You just want to keep the pork hydrated. You also don't want to cover past the surface of the pork. I'm not really measuring anything, just covering to the surface. And then you're just going to put the crock pot on low for 8 hours. I normally do it overnight, and here it is the next morning. I've turned the crock pot on, tested with a fork to make sure that it is tender and good to go. And now for the fun part. So I took the roast out of the crock pot and put it into a large bowl, leaving all of the liquid and onions and stuff in the crock pot for now. We'll get to those in a little bit. And then with 2 forks, I'm just gonna pull the pork apart. It should be really easy to pull apart because it's nice and tender and moist and good. And yeah, so I generally like to keep it in larger chunks when I'm pulling, because as we add the sauce, it'll continue to break down more, and I don't want it to become complete mush. So now that it is all shredded to a rougher size, I'm going to put all of the onions in and then start putting barbecue sauce. There isn't really a method to this madness. I just go until the texture is right and it tastes about right. And yeah, this is what mine looks like when it's done, but that's it. You just put it in the fridge and eat it with tortilla chips, on sandwiches, however you want, really. You can do lots of things with pulled pork.